Let's start with the program. My name is Dominic Knoll. I'm the CEO of the World Trade Center, and I'm very happy that everyone could come today. I said, please, if you have still some food at your table, don't stop eating. This is a working lunch, so please go ahead. I'm very excited that everyone is here today to our second executive speaker series of today. Before we start, I would like to thank a couple of sponsors that made this possible. One of our half series sponsors is Jones Walker, as well as today's sponsor of this event is South Coast Solar. Also, I would like to thank our contributing partners that you find in the program. So let's give them a hand of applause. Thank you. Then I would like the thanks go on. I would like to thank you, the chairman of the World Trade Center, as well as the board, for the foresight of putting such programs together 1.5 years ago, as well as the staff, our staff, for making this possible. Thank you so much. Today we are very excited to have with us a very distinct speaker from Leidos. You will hear more about, but they are roughly a $7 billion solution-focused business. They are now Fortune 500 companies. They come out of a spin-off in 2013 from a company that was founded in 1969, SAIC. Many of you probably are familiar with it or have done business with them. They are roughly employing currently about 22,000 employees. They are working actually in several industries, with being the defense probably, or they're the leader in the defense industry, but at the same time they work in health and also in the engineering fields. They will make a couple examples that you, or I'm sure you know about, but basically one contribution next to defense, and in defense they work together with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, with the Department of Defense, for engineering, system integration, technical services, and other services. But besides that, they also work in the healthcare side. They are right now running one of the largest cancer research centers in the nation. So they have done some significant research in both cancer and AIDS discoveries. The same they also do with alternative energies. So they have done some award-winning solutions that they were helping to build the first complete solar community in North America. It's located in Alberta, Canada. Close here, they also have several offices, one being in New Orleans as well in Baton Rouge. And yesterday at the lunch, at the dinner, I also found out that they were instrumental in the Utah Olympics to make sure that the security was provided there in the proper way, as well as they have done some other help with international Olympics, but I guess the speaker will talk more about later there. Also lately, if you have seen the news, we had scheduled to have the CEO here, but lately you have seen probably in the news, he transferred from CEO being the chairman, and the new CEO is sworn in, so to speak, as we speak here, and that is the former CEO of Boeing, who will then be from now on the CEO of Leidos. So today, I said it's my pleasure to welcome John Thomas. He's the Chief Strategic Officer of Leidos. You have his extensive bio in your package. But I will just highlight a couple points. First point, Mr. John Thomas, General John Thomas, began working with Leidos in 2002 after retiring as Major General from the U.S. Army, where he fulfilled a career in Army intelligence. He is, as said, currently the Vice President, Chief Strategic Officer of Leidos. He manages several areas. He manages strategy, mergers and acquisition, communication, government and legislative affairs, and also has been working for the company in the national security sector and was the Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Integrated System Business Unit. So without any further ado, we're very excited to have our current speaker here today, and please help me to welcome him. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dominic. It's great to be here. Get myself organized here for a minute and try not to make too much noise. So first, it is great to be here, and it's great to come back to New Orleans. I've been here on and off, over the years, but I think the most memorable occasion is where my wife and I had our honeymoon. So that was neat. I was stationed in Alabama, and we came over here. So I've got great memories of New Orleans, and been in and out since that time, every few years. So I am honored to be standing in for General John Jumper, who really would have liked to be here, and I wish he could have been here. He's a great leader and a great person, and this week we're in the process of transitioning the CEO, and General Jumper will move into sort of a retirement. I wouldn't say a real retirement, because he's going to remain as our chairman, and he's on the board of several other companies, Rolls-Royce North America as an example, number of mining companies. So I expect he'll be pretty active. But he served 39 years in the Air Force. He was the 17th Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so he has tremendous experience. And he joined us in 2006, so he's been with the company for a while, and he came on as CEO a little more than 2 years ago, really with the task to lead us through probably the most significant transition of our company. As Dominic said, it was founded in 1969, and he had the task to transition and then stand up really a new 40-year-old company, which I'll talk a little bit about today. I'll talk a little bit about the company and how we went through this transition, and what the reasoning behind it was, and kind of how that happened. And then I'll be very glad to answer any questions. So as Dominic said, I retired from the Army in 2002. And worked mostly in Intel jobs most of my career, and joined SAIC a few months later. When I joined SAIC, it was still an employee-owned company. So I was there, went through the initial public offering to become a public company, and all the transitions associated with becoming a public company, and at the same time dealing with Sarbanes-Oxley and all those kind of requirements that were laid on us. Bob Beister, many of you probably have heard or know about. He's legendary, kind of in the employee ownership and entrepreneurship circles. He founded the company in 1969, and focused on really the hardest technical problems facing the nation. And if you go back to that time, for those of you who are old enough, and there's a few besides me in here. Vietnam, a lot of anti-war demonstration. There had been much of the research that had been done in the country was done by universities, and about that time, many of the universities decided they wanted to divorce themselves from any defense-related research. So that spawned a number of companies, including our own. SAIC was established in 1969, focused primarily on defense-related research and primarily around nuclear weapons. And we still maintain a significant depth of experience around things nuclear, and kind of on all sides of that, the development, and also dealing with the results and that kind of thing. So that was our founding. So we went from a company that was really founded to help the government, to provide the kind of technical expertise that the government was having trouble accessing. We then, and really still do, have a high quantity of PhDs, high concentration of really very high-end research. But our journey really over the last few years, since we became public and up through today, has been about unlocking shareholder value. That was the original reason we went public. It was to unlock value to our shareholders, who at that time were the employees. We were employee ownership, and like many companies, when you get to a larger size, you have trouble keeping the internal stock fluid enough to be able to people cash out their stock when they wanted to, and that's the primary reason we went public. We had, as an employee-owned company, we truly were an employee-owned company. The stock was widely dispersed. Almost all, and maybe all employees owned stock. There was a very small concentration. Dr. Beister, the founder, never owned more than 1% or 2% of the stock. So it was widely held, and we had to be able to unlock that value to the shareholders at that time, who were the employees. So we went from that time of SAIC being kind of almost a garage in your backyard kind of company with some of the best scientists the company had, working kind of the next big thing in technology, to one of the largest government contracts. When we split, we were in the S&P 500. We're still on the Fortune 500 that had a significant amount of work around national security, health, and engineering, as Dominic said. So the last few years, though, were a difficult time for our company, and really, I think for the industry. There were two things that drove the company to separate and to do this to do the spin that I'll talk about here in a minute. One was obviously the idea of increasing shareholder return, unlocking value for the shareholders. But the other one, which may be a Washington-based discussion. I'm not sure how much of it goes on out in New Orleans, but within the government, there's two types of work, basically. There's one type of work that is kind of directly supporting the government, and that's work that advises the government on things like maybe like proposals they're going to put out, or like how work is managed. And then there's another piece of work that is the actual performance of the work, building the ship or building the airplane or building the IT system. And over years, the government became more and more strict about separating those two pieces of work. If you did the work that we generally call CETA work, systems engineering technical assistance, working inside the government on directing projects, you could not then perform on those projects. And the government became more and more strict, and especially around our customer set. So that put us in a position where we had to do something. There were parts of the business where we were very active, where we had a lot of work, that we couldn't move forward. We were really boxed in. And the folks who were doing the work directly supporting the government, they really couldn't expand either, because the other part of the company would beat up on them. So we had to look at how to fix that. Now, that was the same time many other companies did the same thing. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, they all divested, spun off, sold their pieces of the business that did this friend of the government work. So we were not unique with that. But the way we approached it, I think, was somewhat unique. We decided that we would not separate a part of the company, and this is kind of the orphan child, and we're gonna spin it out in a spin or sell it or do something like that. But we're going to do our best to create two world-class companies, and create both companies would be in a position to compete favorably in the market, and that they would both be successful. So we went to great lengths over a period of a year plus to structure this spin out in such a way that we came out with two companies with very high potential. So we spent a lot of time doing that, and we ended up with breaking the company along the line of what we generally called a solutions company, which is a company that, in general sense, builds stuff, and in today's world, a lot of that stuff is IT, but still builds stuff, provides solutions to customers, and then a company that is primarily government services that provides people to the government, basically people to augment government staff, and that would be the services part of the company. So we came up with these two companies that we originally called White Co. and Blue Co., since we didn't, again, we wanted to create two companies. We didn't want to give one idea that one is the company being spun off or anything like that. And we built them around one being a solutions company, one being a services company. That split ended up being on the order of 60% on the solutions side, 40% on the services side. And that's the spin that was successfully accomplished last September, the end of September, 29th of September. It did really everything we hoped it would do. We unlocked tremendous shareholder value. For that period, as part of the spin, we did a special dividend. I think it was $1 a share, if I'm correct, but a special dividend. And when you look at the total shareholder return, in our comparable companies, we were among the top 3 or 4 companies during that spin time. So we unlocked that value for the shareholder as we had planned to do. The other thing we did was remove this OCI constraint, and that also has paid off. We've, for instance, in our company, we've been able to move into areas and have won a little more than $100 million worth of work in areas where we previously were restricted. So it has worked. It has not been an easy time, but it has worked. Now, to make things a little more interesting, I guess, 29th of September was the day of the split. We went up to New York Stock Exchange and rang the bell for the second time for many people. It was kind of neat. And then on the 1st of October, the government shut down. So we had a weekend to kind of operate normally, and then we had to go through the government shutdown, which put tremendous stress, on the business. Employees that can't go to work. What do you do with them? Are you going to get paid? When are you going to get paid? The whole those of you who work in the government know that everything slowed down. It just became very difficult. So that's what we greeted at the time of the spin, and I'll talk a little more about that. But hopefully we're through that. So when it came time to spin, we had to decide who was going to be called what. And it was kind of an interesting discussion, where we obviously wanted to maintain the name of SAIC because it has a good name in the marketplace, and it has value, and we want to be respectful of history and the founder and all those kind of things. But where should it go? So we did a fair amount of research, and we found out in most places today the SAIC name was more aligned with government services. So the SAIC name went to the government services company, which was the spun-off company, not the parent company, which is, again, an interesting spin, not usually done that way. So SAIC went with the technical services company, and then we had to decide for a name for our company. And I very quickly lost interest in it. I was managing the national security business at that time, so I got to sit in these sessions. But after about the first one, I lost interest because I could tell this was not going to be a good deal. We had some, we had an ad agency from New York helping us. No name that a human could recognize was available. By the time you look at domain names that everybody has bought up that you have to go buy. By the time you look at trademark issues, by the time, we are not a huge international company, but we are an international company. When you look and make sure, you're not cursing in Swahili or something, you really get a limited deal. So there are all these names worked through. Go around the table with the executive team. Like I say, I pretty much lost interest. Let the CEO and COO deal with it. They weren't happy. They weren't any of their names. So Leidos actually came as a clip out of the middle of Kaleidoscope. The idea being that what we do in our company is bring together solutions from pieces, and similar to what a kaleidoscope does. So that's where Leidos came from. It also was available. Kind of a big deal. Everybody has bought up every possible internet domain name that you can think of. Somebody who was smart did that 20 years ago and is now making a lot of money off their $50 registration or whatever it costs to register initially. So that was our name. Did not go over at all with the employees. We did get through that pretty well when we explained a little more, and I'd say the name is embraced now. But that obviously has given us a huge marketing challenge, and we've been working hard at the marketing piece. We're making some pretty good progress with our basic customer base, but the name was really an interesting exercise. The only people that made any money on that, I think, were the advertising folks, and they'd be glad to continue to provide pages of possible names. So we're Leidos. The other company is SAIC. We're both public. We're both in the market. We are still on Fortune 500. SAIC, or new SAIC, is a little smaller than that, so they're kind of right below that company. But that's where we are, and that's where we stood up that 45-plus-year-old new company. So I'll talk a little bit about Leidos. Dominic talked about the size of the company and what we do. But we are a solutions company, so our focus is delivering solutions. That means we build stuff, and we operate in three major markets. We operate in the national security market, and about 80% of our business in national security is in the intelligence community, and I would say it's most of that is around the current buzzwords of big data and data analytics, that kind of work, although we do some other things for the intel community. We have some amount of work with most parts of the federal government. One of our areas of focus where we're having good initial success that we couldn't work before is command and control. So obviously it's very closely related to what we do for the intel business. So we have been successful beginning to work into the command and control part of the business, communications, computers, the same kind of thing, and have been successful there. So that's the national security work, about 80% of the business. We do build things. We are just in the process of building an autonomous ship. It's designed to trail submarines for a period of 90 days autonomously, so unmanned, and it's got some potential for a lot of missions. So we've just finished the hull on that, and that's getting ready to begin to do some demonstrations, some test work. That's a project that's run by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. So it's kind of a new deal. We just won the contract and are in initial production of a new combatant craft for the Navy Special Ops folks. So we do have a fair amount of expertise around maritime. It's interesting how we got the expertise around maritime and design. Dr. Beister, who I mentioned earlier, founded the company. He's a sailor. For a number of years, he supported America's Cup, and we did the whole design for that work for a number of years. I don't know that we ever made any money on it, but we ended up with a very high-end cadre of folks that do that kind of design work, and that's kind of what spawned a lot of our maritime business. So we do the national security work. We do health work, and we do two things really in health. The one that I think we're exceptionally proud of that Dominic mentioned, we do the lab work for the National Cancer Institute. That's a federally funded research organization. So we have the contract to essentially run the lab, and we've had that for 12, 13 years, and doing really very cutting-edge research around cancer, mostly around genome kind of work, and very, very successful. The bulk of our work in health is around electronic health records. We are in both the military electronic health records and the civilian commercial hospital electronic health records. It's very interesting. It's a very dynamic market. There's a lot of things happening both around health records with a lot of legislation, a lot of regulation. Also a lot happening in that industry. Hospitals are consolidating, doctors' practices are consolidating, a lot happening there. The military electronic health records, we actually designed and built that system 20 years ago and have been maintaining it ever since. And DoD is in the process of rebidding their electronic health records. They're going to go to a commercial product as opposed to the homegrown product that we develop for them. So we're in the middle of that competition right now, which will be a tough competition for us. So that's kind of what we do in the health business. We have about $1 billion of work in the health business, and then we have about $1 billion of work in the engineering business. And we do really 3 or 4 things in engineering. We have a little talk at the table. We do design build work, and we do it around what we call process heavy industry. So we do work in petroleum refinery and chemicals. We're in fact moving an ammonia plant in Louisiana right now. We do midstream stuff for the oil and gas industry. We've built a lot of canning plants. Many of the beers you've had to drink, we've designed the plant that built those cans. So we've done a lot of alternative energy work, as Dominic mentioned. We've built biomass plants. We've built geothermal plants. We've built some solar work, more geothermal and biomass. We actually right now operate a biomass plant because we had the owners go bankrupt, and we now own it in Connecticut. We're getting ready to sell that. If anybody's interested, I can make you a deal in the back of the room on the way out. So we do that. We also do a fair amount of power engineering. We have worked for Entergy for more than 10 years. We've supported them and look to continue to support them. So we support many of the major utilities. We also do a lot of work for small utilities, for municipal utilities and co-op utilities. We help them with transitioning to this smart grid where you look at individual meters and manage your network that way. So we do a lot of those 2 pieces. And then we do, and that's where you'll find offices here and in other places. We do a lot of environmental work. We've done environmental work for a long time, and continue to do that. Mostly government, but we have a significant commercial practice in environmental work, and we do that for several of the major oil companies and some other folks. So that's kind of the company. We're faced with a challenging time right now, and any of you that work for the government realize that. The budget is going down, and we predict the part of the government budget that we see that we can access is probably going down a couple percent, up to maybe 4% a year for the next couple of years. We don't see any positive changes in the government budget, at least probably till 17. The other thing that I didn't know before that I've learned now the hard way is the medical business, the medical community in the U.S. is significantly impacted by government spending and regulation and the whole 9 yards. 60% of hospitals in the U.S., 60% of the money that the hospitals use to run their businesses comes from the federal government, either in Medicare, Medicaid, some other kind of direct payment. Medicare was not accepted from the sequestration like part of defense was. So you see continuing pressure on the money available to the medical community, and you read about that in the paper every day. And then there's a whole set of regulations around the electronic health records business that is very political and constantly kind of being looked at. As an example here, several months ago, the Department of Health and Human Services said this one requirement would not change, and that requirement would happen this year. And within a month, Congress passed a law that said it's not going to happen. It's going to happen at least a year later. So it's a very field that's very much influenced by regulation. So that's kind of where we are, working in those three areas. We're in pretty good shape of standing up our company. We've had, I guess, 2 full quarters as our new company. So that's all off to a pretty good start. We've done okay as far as the stock market's concerned. We still have an education challenge with our customers and our Wall Street analysts and the general public, and we're putting a lot of emphasis on that in areas where we have a lot of density to try to get that fixed. That we're not a new company. We're the same company that's supported you for the last 20 or 30 years. We've just got a new name. We're working our way through that. We moved our headquarters, again, to provide some separation between us and the new SAIC company. We're just in the process of moving into our new headquarters, getting that established. And then we've brought our new CEO on board. Roger Crone replaced John Jumper, and Roger came from running a portion of Boeing, but he probably wishes he was the CEO of the Boeing company. But he has run the part of Boeing that is most aligned with SAIC, space and networks and intelligence, that part of that part of Boeing. So we're very happy to have him on board. He brings just a great background, and one of the key reasons John Jumper couldn't be here yesterday afternoon, we did the initial kind of town hall meeting with employees, where John introduced the new CEO, and he had his opportunity to make initial remarks to the employees. So we've gone through the cut or the split, and where are we now? I think one thing that everybody in here probably knows is your challenges never end. So we're now in a process of moving into a culture of what we're calling continuous improvement. We're using Lean Six Sigma techniques. We've got the organization structured, and as you can imagine, we had help from consultants. So we've got a corporate structure that generally consultants thought was the best way to do it. We're now in the process of doing our own look at that, using kind of Lean Six Sigma techniques and our own people, our own expertise, to kind of shape that organization for the challenges we have today and take ownership of that. So we've got that, we've got that ongoing right now. That that's a continuing deal. But that's a big issue right now, is making sure that we're making the right the right transition to the right organization for the new company. There's no way you can see that ahead a year and a half or 2 years ago. The landscape today is considerably different than the landscape was even 2 years ago. I mean, our revenues have probably gone down approaching $1 billion with the government, with the combination of the government sequestration, budget reductions, and the fact of withdrawal from Iraq and Afghanistan, where we had considerable people. We tend to follow our customers, so we have people today in Iraq and Afghanistan supporting the U.S. government, and that is on a steady drawdown. So the revenue is smaller. The good thing is our margins are up, so that part is good, and we're doing pretty good shape keeping the bottom line where it needs to. We've given good return to shareholders. And this whole deal was recognized as the spin of the year by the Association for Corporate Growth. So it recognized as a pretty significant achievement that was fairly well done. So that's kind of where we are. We now spend half or maybe a little less than half of our time seeing what's going on in Congress down the street, and what's going to be the budget. We don't expect to have a budget this year. Our Congress can't seem to get one of the few jobs they're supposed to do done. So we won't have probably won't have a budget. So come October we will have a continuing resolution, and that brings all kind of stress on our business and probably on many of your businesses. But that's what we expect. So we're kind of getting ready for that. Leading employees through this split and doing our best to serve our customers. So that's kind of where we are and what Leidos is all about. You now know who Leidos is, so I think I accomplished my mission here today. And I'd be glad, I think we have time, I would be more than happy to talk about anything you'd like to talk about, any pieces of that or any questions or comments or anything else you'd like me to do. Yeah, please.
Intelligence, et cetera. And what is your interpretation of the damage that was done as a result of his leaks?
Well, I think first the damage is significant. I mean, you see it in our relationships with other countries day in, day out. The damage is significant. I'm kind of a simple guy, and I was raised, and I don't know, my parents did 100% good job, but to to kind of live up to your commitments. And one of the things Snowden did, because I've done it for 40 years, is he signed a non-disclosure agreement. And you can agree or disagree on politics, but he violated an agreement he had made, and he violated his bond that he had with the United States of America. He had a bond not to disclose that information. He had many ways to have his objections noticed. You read in the paper, and I don't have any inside information on the paper, but there is no evidence that he did that. He may have sent one cryptic email to the Inspector General at NSA that you'd have trouble saying was a complaint, but he never took it through the many different avenues you have. And working in the intel community as I did for 30 years, you know what those avenues are. They are not a secret, and he didn't do that. So my real issue with Snowden is that he violated his bond, and you know, that says something to me about a person. Well, that's for the court. That's for the court to figure out. But I'd say he significantly damaged the United States. He damaged our credibility. He damaged our ability to protect ourselves. So I think he caused significant harm to the United States. It's going to take us a long time and a lot of money to work our way out of.
I guess when you look at your mix of business and you guys are setting your strategy and resource allocation, what areas do you see being more growth oriented with the reality of a shrinking budget at the federal level?
Sure. So one of the things we're always in the process of doing, but we have done, we have done with a lot of attention since the split. As we look at our work and divide our work into pieces, into segments, and compare those segments to the external market to see how we're doing, what we're doing, where we're doing, and then we end up with areas that we prioritize for investment and where we think are growing. So I think the number one that probably would relate to everybody here is cybersecurity. We have $700 million of cybersecurity business, and our cybersecurity business is what I would call high-end cybersecurity. It's not an IT systems administrator, making sure a patch is on. It's no kidding working with malware and developing countermeasures to malware and detection and that kind of stuff. So we have $700 million of that business. That is a growth business for us, and one that we have invested in. The whole area that I talked about earlier around electronic health records and the exchange of information between the health enterprise, if that's the right word, is an area that we're investing in. In the engineering side, we believe that the shale gas economy revolution, whatever you want to call it, will trigger an increase in our design build business for the kind of work we do as people are trying to move either closer to the energy source or trying to improve the infrastructure for the energy source. So I think those are our three largest areas. We also have an area that is, you don't hear a lot about, but it's a growth area, an important area, investment area for us, and that's in airborne ISR, where we have kind of excelled and led that market, where we put sensors on airplanes, and we're not an airplane builder, so we're not a Boeing or a Lockheed. We don't build airplanes. So what we generally do are take commercial airplanes and turn them into ISR airplanes, and we've got a very good business there. That happens to be another area that, previous to the split, we were actually conflicted from doing some work because of where people were working, and that's freed us. And since that time, we've had some pretty good wins there because we have pretty good capability. So they're kind of the areas, probably the biggest areas we're focused on. We expect cyber probably will be the biggest contribution to operating income here over the next few years. It's the second biggest now. The other area that we have a great position in, and we just have to really maintain, which is not very visible to most people. We build what we call security products, and these are the scanners that are at ports and somewhat at airports. They're not the ones you walk through at an airport, but they're the ones that screen the checked baggage. We also have scanners at all the U.S. ports and many overseas ports that do containers coming in. We pretty much have the whole market on radiation detectors at ports to see if there's anything, in the thing they can be. And we're one of probably the 4 international leaders in that market. And it's a niche market, but it's an important market to us. But,
Yes, sir, General. With regard to your comments about cybersecurity and the high-end portion of cybersecurity now, are you in a position to speak, non-classified with regard to the amount of work, the kind of work that you do with DARPA?
Yes. We're not, probably surprise you, we're not doing any cybersecurity work with DARPA that I know of. Yeah. Our cybersecurity work is primarily with, that kind of work is with the U.S. DoD mainline organizations, not DARPA. So what we're doing with DARPA, a couple areas, data mining, data analytics, big data, those kind of areas. The autonomous vehicle area is an area I mentioned our ship that we're building, but the autonomous vehicles generally are an area we've done a lot of work with DARPA on, and continue to work that autonomous vehicle that I talked about is a DARPA project. So we continue to do that kind of work in DARPA. We also have a fair amount of high-end sensor work with DARPA. We're not a company that generally builds sensors that then get widely distributed, but we do a lot of the R&D side. So we do a fair amount of sensor phenomenology, as we call it, the kind of high-end science associated with sensors. We do a lot of that with DARPA. So that's generally the 2 or 3 areas we work in DARPA. DARPA was an area where we had to decide, again, a few years ago, are you going to be on this inside the government side or a performer side? And we decided to go on the performer side. So DARPA is an important customer of ours. Not generally a lot of money, because DARPA doesn't spend a lot of money, but it's critical work. We try to use that to advance the rest of our business. Together with our own internal IRAD, we spend about $30 million a year on internal R&D that we fund ourselves. But we also try to spin off the individual technical knowledge that we get out of our work with DARPA. So it's an important customer for us, not necessarily in dollars, but in technology and kind of leading the charge. Yeah. Please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Roy Kizer, Deputy Director of the Port of South Louisiana. We're physically located between the Port of New Orleans and the Port of Baton Rouge. Maritime security is a major role player throughout the port industry nationwide, worldwide per se. Right. It has served the port industry in Louisiana as a super value added asset. If in fact your company was at the table or a part of the think tank of the maritime security industry as we know it and live it today, what were some of the offerings / deliverables that your company brought to the table?
Yeah. In fact, Dominic and I talked about that. We've got to do some business development around your port authority. We do pretty much the full range of the physical security things that you talked about. We do. For the Air Force, for instance, we have done most of all their bases with a kind of an integrated security solution. So that's all the cameras, that's the sensors, that's the command and control, that's the license plate readers, that's the gates, that's the whole 9 yards. Then we do the cargo inspection system that we talked about, which we've sold a number of ports, both U.S. and international, that will take the containers. It'll scan the container, but it'll also collect the identity of the driver, collect any markings that are on the container, and put that all into a single file called we call ours the integrated cargo inspection system. So those are the kind of things we do, and we have the capability to deliver an integrated solution. And kind of where we work in that security business is in the more regulated higher end. It's much more than just kind of hanging a camera on the corner. It's the integrated system. We do the chemical and biological system that is on all military bases around the world. It's called Project Guardian. We've done that. That's fielded now. We're just doing kind of O&M on it. So we do integrated security, and we'll have to get our business development marketing folks talking to you. Most of our business has been either with the military or with the U.S. Customs, and to a lesser extent ports. We've done some ports in the Middle East on the way I just discussed. So we do have a pretty good offering there, and it would we'll have to get our folks down this part of the world. I learned from Dominic last night a little bit about your port. It's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Yeah. Anything else?
And I have one question regarding, you mentioned the government. You mentioned that you obviously with your headquarters currently, it seems like there's not a long walk to do to be there in the center. So if you can kind of address a little bit what you see with the government and how do you see it, and what are some of the biggest challenges, and if you really feel there might be another shutdown in October, or how you guys internally prepare to do the risk assessment in that regard. Thank you.
Sure. We have a small government affairs staff that kind of watches the government. So the biggest challenge that we have, and I'm sure it's anybody in here that deals with government, is kind of the lack of predictability. It is just so uncertain as to what's going on. Our view is that there's not going to be another government shutdown. That's not going to happen. That's our view anyway. But there probably will be a continuing resolution. That means they won't have a budget. So in October, they'll pass these short-term funding measures that have a lot of prohibitions on how much the various departments can spend and how much new programs can be started and all that kind of stuff. And the effect on that is it just slows down the whole system, because it flows down to the individual contracting officers that all of us that do government contract work with. It takes a long time to flow down. It takes a long time for them to get their guidance. It takes a long time for them to be told how much money they can spend, and it just slows the whole system down and gives you really no predictability. So it's not unusual to have contracts that end up kind of being gapped because they can't get anything in between. It's not unusual for them to say, we thought we were going to spend $1 million on this contract, but I only have $750,000 to spend on the contract, so suck it up and figure out what we're not going to do. And it makes it very difficult for planning. Now we, like most companies I expect, we can follow the exact part of the federal budget that ends up funding our kinds of projects. We know kind of exactly where that is, and much of our stuff is not, you're not going to find our jobs called out, in a federal budget, but we know what part funds it, and we follow that pretty closely, and that's why I said we're expecting a reduction anywhere from about 1.5% to 4% here in the next year to the money that we have access to. That the overall federal budget might be different than that, but we do expect that there will not be a budget. There'll be a continuing resolution come October. It's too close to the election. There's too much going on, and we'll live with that. But probably not a government shutdown. Okay. Oh, I have one more.
I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing a few thoughts on leadership and your transition from the military into the private sector, some of the things you may have learned over the years, having experienced both, and what it takes to be an effective leader, and maybe some of the mistakes you've made and learned from.
A lot of mistakes, right? That's a lot of mistakes. I'll talk the transition first. The transition for me personally was not all that difficult. I first, probably most importantly, came into a good company that was willing to let me learn. And when I first came with the company, my job was really to help the company understand the requirements of the Intel community customer. And for me, that was relatively easy because the last number of years in the military, I was either responsible for or involved in systems. So I kind of knew how the system worked, how system development worked, how things were bought in the DoD. And I also knew generally how things were used. The biggest challenge I see to companies that want to sell to probably to anybody, but to the military, is they come up with a really good idea, and the idea is good. They have very, very difficult time making that idea work in the environment their customer works in. So the environment of the way an Intel soldier in the field actually does their job is an important aspect of whether an idea is going to work or not. Because in the Army, soldiers have the ultimate vote on anything any of us deliver to them. If they take that with them when they go on an operation and use it, it's a success. If it stays back in the camp or never gets turned on or sits in the corner somewhere, that's the other verdict. So that knowledge of how your customer actually operates is probably the most important thing, and what I thought I could contribute in the beginning. So that made the transition easy. And then I had some folks that were very good at helping me learn all the business stuff. I came out of the government, which operates in a budget environment. You have to get into a cost environment in business, and I had people helping me learn that. So that all, I didn't have a huge challenge. On the leadership part, there's really not much difference in my mind. A lot of folks think the military is very top-down, very directive, and it really isn't. It is much more of a consensus organization. Now, obviously, it does make decisions, which sometimes is different than in other places, but it is a consensus kind of an organization as far as building options to present to the decision maker, commander, or whoever. So I didn't find it much different. I think it comes down to treating your people right, and making sure your people are taken care of, knowing your business, understanding your business to the best level you can, and ultimately being successful in the mission, because success, whether it's in business or the military, is kind of the currency that works on morale and all those things. So if you focus on your people, you take care of your people, and you're successful in your business to to deliver the advantage of that back to your employees. That's kind of the basic stuff. So I don't see the leadership really very much different. Now, the one thing you do have in the military, you have very junior leaders given significantly more responsibility than you'll see in industry. So I think you tend to develop that experience quicker. But there are as many military folks that get into industry that aren't successful as are. It's just kind of how it is. But I don't think it's much different. And I'm not a finance guy, so I never had to learn all the details of finance, and still don't know it. So, okay, Dominic. Great.
Well, thank you so much, General Thomas. That was very for your insight remarks, and as well for your experiences that you shared today with us. Just one or two housekeeping things you have seen already in your program. We will have later today the CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, as well as on September 26th, the co-CEO of Whole Foods. And in November, we'll have the CEO of Qantas Oil Services. So please mark that on your calendar. We would love to see you again with us. I think there's all very exciting events like we just heard today. said this, I would also like to thank all of our contributing sponsors, our media partners, and all the other people who helped to make this possible. And one more time, thank you so much for being here. Thank you.